I want to talk briefly about innovation. This is a huge thing. The course is called Engineering, Innovation, and Design. I have a very particular thought about innovation that I want to share with you. This is a diagram from a very famous design consultant and how they explain innovation. Now, I think I see where they're going. They talk about the business on one side, technology and people. And they say, look, innovation happens in different places here. Process innovation occurs between business and technology. Functional innovation occurs over here. Emotional innovation occurs over here, like building a brand. And then they have experience innovation. And this is this thing that's very, very special. They say, yes, when we combine understanding of the business, the technology, the people, do we build something that people want? Is it able to be built? And will it create a business that can sustain itself? Then we have achieved great experience innovation. Now, it's not a bad model. And it's not untrue that innovation occurs in these places. But I think it's not a useful model. I think in that zone here, you build things that are useful. They are useful. But they may not be innovative. So here's what I think about innovation. There's something out there. There's something. And you're required to do something, and yet you have this other tension pulling you because you desire to do something else. That seems in conflict. I'm required to create a nuclear-powered car, but our desire to create a nuclear-powered car, but I'm required to adhere to laws of government, which is causing a lot of problems. I am required to make an artificial heart valve. And I want to make that, but what I realize is that there's a problem because in this requirement I have something that spins and it creates friction. And the friction causes blood platelets to form and causes clotting. And I desire to have no clotting happen even though I have this spinning object in a heart valve. Tension. I am required to pass the class, but I desire to go out drinking with my friends. These are in tension, okay. So, when you have this and you start stretching this, by resolving this, this is where innovation occurs. Innovation is the result of resolving your need to do something with your desire of how it can be done. The designer's job is to reconcile the seemingly irreconcilable. The designer's job is to reconcile the seemingly irreconcilable. It's not that you can't do it. Maybe you think you can't do it. It appears that you can't do it. But you've got to think about it differently, or think about it from a new angle, or get some new information to resolve the seemingly irreconcilable. And that is what your job is your whole lives, is to try to figure out the solution to these problems. If they were obvious, people would just do them. But when they're not obvious, and they cause this tension, this pain, this is where the innovation occurs. And where you get people who do things, like a company called Levitronics, who took that spinning thing, and they said, well, we know if they're touching, it causes friction. Instead, they used magnets to levitate it, so there's no friction at all, instead of a heart valve. Do you want to talk about the heart valve for a second?
There's a small company out in Waltham called Levitronics, and part of their charter was to build an artificial heart that could be used at least temporarily as substitution until a real heart was available for transplant. And you know, the usual way that you build a pump is a rotary pump that produces just a constant pressure, but everyone knows that the heart beats like this, and everyone assumed that the body needs that heartbeat in order for the biological processes to work as they're supposed to. Turns out that's not the case. Turns out that if you pump blood smoothly through the body, it works. You get oxygen from the lungs to the parts that need it, and you actually can have a working rotary heart pump. So Levitronics thought, well, you know, this would be a great thing to build, except that a spinning pump shaft has a bearing at either end of the shaft, and there's friction in the bearing, which creates heat. The heat creates blood clots. The blood clots break off and go to the lungs, and that's an embolism, and the person dies. So the question was, well, it looks like you can't do it. So talk about reconciling the seemingly irreconcilable. It turns out that you can magnetically levitate the ends of the shaft so that they don't actually touch the bearing, and you have a frictionless bearing. Now, it's not stable. It takes an external electronic circuit in order to be able to sense the little latitudinal motions that come up in the shaft, but we're pretty advanced in our technology now. We can sense the position of the shaft, and you can fix that. And Levitronics has actually been selling that product for the last 4 or 5 years. It's saved lives. It works. It reconciles the seemingly inconceivable, well, inconceivable, but irreconcilable. And you know, that is what I would call a real out-of-the-box innovative idea.
I want you all to work in pairs for just a few minutes. I want you to come up with a list. Let's see if you can come up with the longest list in 3 minutes. What group could come up with the longest list in 3 minutes of either things you've experienced personally or things that you know about where people had to reconcile the seemingly irreconcilable, to solve a seemingly impossible design problem at the time. You have 3 minutes. Find out. Okay, who put down one thing or more? Wow, pretty good. 2, 3 things, 4 things, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, okay, 15, 20, 25, okay, 21, 22. How many did you get? 22 things. 22. Oh, both 22? 21. Okay. So, someone who got 5, who only got 5 or fewer? 5 or fewer. Okay. Tell us one of them. Portable media players. Tell me what you mean by that. Yeah, go ahead.
Basically making something that's small and functional and feature-rich.
That would do what?
Play anytime.
Right. Okay. So it's like the idea of like putting all your music in your pocket, right? That seems impossible to do at some point in time, right? And now you're like, of course, all my music's in my pocket, all my videos are in my pocket, everything's in my pocket. Got big pockets. Okay. Yes. So things like that. Okay, that's an excellent one. In the back. Yes. Infrared thermometers, yeah. How would you be able to get the temperature of something at distance?
Light.
Well, you got 21 of them. We're going to work our way up to you. Oh, yeah, people got 10 or fewer. Groups that got 10 or fewer. Okay. Tell us, Daniel.
Getting a product, selling a product without a sales force.
Selling a product without having a sales force, right? That's an amazing idea. Like, what do you do when you have anybody doing the selling? How can you possibly do that? And said, I've got the internet. I'm Jeff Bezos. I can sell everything in the world. A self-driving car. Yeah, seems impossible. GM is working on this. We're putting a lot of effort into this. In fact, I've had a conversation recently with someone who thought, there's no way we're going to have self-driving cars in the next 15 years. They think, well, maybe for special lanes, special places. But I think that we're going to see a lot more self-driving cars with breathalyzers on them. You are not driving home. Get in the back seat. Okay. You pass out, you wake up at home. Right? Okay. Amazing. Who else? 10 or fewer? Yes.
No, sorry, I had more.
You had more than 10. Okay. Who had 10 or fewer?
Nuclear fusion.
Nuclear fusion. Can we do it?
Yeah, just can't sustain it.
But it can't sustain it. Interesting. So we're so close. But we desire it. What else? How about 15 or fewer? Oh, sorry, were we at 15? 15 or fewer.
Invention of the light bulb.
The invention of a light bulb. So people thought, boy, how do I get light without candles, right? How can I stay in light without candles? Who invented the light bulb? Not Thomas Edison. That was the correct answer. Swan did. Swan did it in England. Small diversion. Swan invents the light bulb. Edison's like, oh, you. And he spends a lot of time trying to figure out how to get around this patent. But we all call them Edison bulbs and not Swan bulbs. Do you know why? Because he made it really big. How did he do it? So clever. So in this whole thing, we talked about process, we talked about stakeholders and all these different people who were involved. And Thomas Edison had a very smart staff. And this staff had a very big, we call it systems thinking perspective. And so they said, well, look, light bulbs are used, light bulbs, candles are used, or things that supply light and heat, gas lamps, are used on the side of fireplaces in very expensive homes, particularly in Boston. They said, here's an idea. We're going to take these light bulb things. We're going to run wires right through the tubes that currently have gas. We'll turn the gas off, and we'll put a meter outside of your house that will measure how much of this electricity you're using for your light bulb. It's all brand new, right? So everyone's like, whatever, okay. And so they did it. That's cool because it won't burn down your house. And they put these bulbs in, and they ran the wires through, because they said, if you don't like it, we'll pull out the wires, turn the gas on, everything just works. So it's easy, low switching costs. Easy to start trying it out, low risk. If you don't like it, you can go back, no problem, money back guarantee. And a way of measuring it. And that's why he became hugely successful. Okay, great. Other inventions from people who got 20 or fewer.
The SR-81 Blackbird.
Yes, the SR-71 Blackbird, yes. Something that would go incredibly fast. How fast does it go? So fast, we don't even know. I think it's still classified. And it goes so fast and flew so high that it couldn't be caught on radar. You couldn't even see it. You didn't know it existed at the time.
The design compromise was about the fuel because it's not sealed at ground level.
Yes, so the design compromise specifically here, it was at ground level, it just leaks fuel. Because when it goes so fast, it gets really hot. And we all know from your thermal class that things expand when they get really hot, like metal. And it would expand and all of a sudden not leak fuel when it was flying really fast. But on the ground, it is just dripping fuel. Pretty crazy, right? What if your car ran like that? I'd love that. I could drive fast all the time. I'm sorry, Mr. Policeman. I had to drive fast. I'd be leaking fuel all over the ground.
Alternating current.
Alternating current, tell us, what was the...
They're looking for a way to distribute and transmit high voltage enough electricity to feed the walls of man, and direct current was not. It wasn't enough.
Didn't work. Okay. Movies, yeah, movies. I want to see in front of me stuff happening, like I'm there. How do I do that? I've got to put you there in front of a train, speeding towards you at 100 miles an hour, or I put a camera. And I project on a big thing. And it's so big, it's so exciting that people in the audience were aghast. They gasped when they saw people moving. What else? And actually, coming off of that, color. We didn't think about color too much. Everything was black and white, but we wanted it in color. And that was a huge process change. How about 22 items or fewer? We'll give it a chance. Go ahead, Patrick.
What did we say? Printing press was a big one.
The printing press. Yeah, huge deal. What was the issue?
That they were having to have scribes.
Yeah, you have to copy everything by hand, which leads to lots of... Well, I don't know if they really cared about the carpal tunnel syndrome thing back then. They might have cared, but lots of errors and translation errors and tons of errors. And what else was the issue there? You're slow. You're very limited. So if you had a book, it's a very big deal to have a book. And probably in the future it will be a big deal to have a book again because we'll all be reading PDFs. And from, is this your group? We got 22? Yes, okay, yes.
So actually we got like anyway, paper cups.
Paper cups.
How do you use something that doesn't, it's not waterproof to actually hold water?
Right, so something that's water, paper will let water go through it at some point when it saturates. And the question is, how do you make it waterproof? Right. So these are all incredible innovations that occurred from paper cups to something like the SR-71 Blackbird.